Good morning and welcome to Stop, Better Safe Than Scammed, presented by COTA New South Wales and the ACCC's National Anti-Scam Centre. I'm Goha Yazdabadi, the CEO of COTA New South Wales, and it's wonderful to see so many of you here with us today. As we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the lands on which we gather, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. We recognise the deep connection that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have to this land and the vital role that elders play as custodians of culture, knowledge and tradition. Their wisdom and guidance are invaluable, not just to their communities, but to all Australians. I'd also like to extend my respects to First Nations people who are with us here today and acknowledge their ongoing connection to the land, the water and the community. So welcome everyone. Our topic today is a timely and crucial one for all of us, but especially for older people who continue to be unfairly targeted by scams. This event, though, is about equipping everyone to better protect themselves and others against scams. As the peak organisation for older people in New South Wales, we want to ensure that everyone can be digitally included and be supported and safe online, no matter their age. And we're delighted to be partnering with trusted organisations and speakers today to present today's events. So let me introduce you to our speakers. Jayde Richmond is General Manager of the ACCC's National Anti-Scam Centre, which promotes public and private collaboration to make Australia a harder target for scams. Jayde is a proud First Nations Australian, and she's a qualified lawyer and graduate of the Australian Institute of Company Directors. Her legal and public service career has led to improved outcomes for vulnerable Australians through compliance, education and advocacy initiatives on consumer rights and safety. Jayde has held roles at the Australian Communications and Media Authority, the Law Institute of Victoria, the Office of Public Prosecutions and Industry Ombudsman schemes. We are excited to hear her insights today. Following Jayde's presentation, we'll hear from Dr. Kate Gould. Kate is a Senior Research Fellow at Monash University who splits her time between neuropsychology research and clinical practice. She is an internationally recognised leader in acquired brain injury research and is a world-leading pioneer and expert in cyber scams. Kate founded CYBERABILTY in 2014 and leads a team of people in conducting research and promoting cyber safety. Following Kate's presentation, we'll be having a panel discussion to draw out some of the important themes for today and the messages shared by our experts. So firstly, please join me in welcoming Jayde Richmond to the stage.
Thank you, Goha, for that introduction, and to you and COTA New South Wales for working with my team to help bring this event to life. And I'd like to thank all of you today for taking time out to come and talk about these really important issues. My presentation will offer a brief introduction to scams, their impacts, and insight into some common scams and tactics to help all of you stay protected. I also want to quickly acknowledge the Gadigal people of in Sydney and on the land whose land we gather on today. The impact of scams cannot be understated. In 2024, combined data that we collected from a range of organisations indicated that total financial losses sat at just over $2 billion. That's $2 billion lost by Australians across nearly 500,000 scam reports. We also know that up to 30% of the most serious scams go unreported. So we suspect that the true cost to be a considerably higher figure. In addition, people aged over 65 reported the highest overall losses to scams. That was just over $100 million. This equates to 31.3% of all reported losses, despite the fact that this group represents just 17.2% of the overall population. The top 5 scams by loss overall were investment scams, romance scams, payment redirection scams, remote access, and phishing scams. And I'm sure many of you have heard of some of these, but I'm going to explain them more during this presentation. The impact of scams is far more than what's highlighted in these figures on the screen. There is also significant psychological impacts, relationship impacts as well, and many victims can feel shame or humiliation. But the truth is that anyone can be scammed. And at my office, we say there is a scam for everyone. One of our intentions in running events like these is to help reduce the stigma experienced by victims, when research shows that we are all likely to know someone who's been affected by a scam. And I certainly know a lot of people in my family circles, and I've almost been scammed myself. To help address the significant impact of scams on Australians, the government launched the National Anti-Scam Centre on the 1st of July 2023. The National Anti-Scam Centre is run by the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, and it brings together experts from government, law enforcement, and the private sector to disrupt scams before they reach consumers. We analyse and act on trends and intelligence from shared data that we collect, and we raise consumer awareness about how to spot and avoid scams. This slide is just a brief snapshot of some of our disruption and awareness activities taken from our 2024 Targeting Scams report, which is available on our website if you'd like to read that. This slide shows the number of websites that we have taken down. It also shows a lot of the industry and consumer engagement activities that we do. So we're working really hard, and I have a team of staff that try to get websites removed from the internet when they are perpetrating scams as quickly as possible so that people are not victimised by them. It's important to emphasise and understand that while we call this a scam is actually a crime with the aim of stealing money or information through deception. Scams are extremely lucrative for the criminals that are behind them. They're an efficient way of generating illicit income, and as such are often perpetrated by large and coordinated criminal networks. And as technology has advanced, so has the sophistication of these crimes. I'm sure you've all heard about artificial intelligence recently and how difficult that's going to make things for us to work out what is real and what is fake. Unfortunately, this means that the scams we see today are often incredibly difficult to identify. Despite this, there are some simple steps you can take to keep yourself safe. At Scamwatch, we use the phrase stop, check, protect to help Australians remember how to stay safe from scams. Stop. Take a moment to consider. Scammers pressure you to do what they say before you can detect something is wrong. They'll try anything to keep you engaging with them. So one of your best defences is to cut off communication as soon as you can. Check. Always check who you're dealing with before sending money or sharing information about yourself. Never use contact details given to you in a message or an email without verifying them. Use only an organisation's official website or apps, and make sure you do so every time. Protect. Act quickly if something feels wrong. Contact your bank or service provider immediately if a scammer steals your money or information, or even if you are unsure whether they have. Once your accounts are secure, report the scam via Scamwatch website, where you can also learn more about different kinds of scams and how to stay safe. Scammers use many different techniques to deceive us. Too many to cover in this short presentation, and new ones are constantly being developed and tested. Every day my teams are looking through scam reports, and it is almost on a daily basis they'll see something new and different that scammers are trying to deceive Australians. It's helpful to know that scammers always make use of at least one of 3 basic levers to manipulate their victims, which all of us are vulnerable to. So we're going to take a closer look at these now. Impersonation is used by scammers to elicit trust or leverage an existing relationship. This could be a well-known government, banking, telecommunications, media, or retail organisation. It could be a celebrity or a well-known authority, can even be a member of parliament or a television host. It could be a business or a client that you deal with, but it can also be a family member or a friend. Scammers can impersonate any of these, and with technology today, it is almost impossible to tell. Impersonation can also involve the imitation of genuine processes or communications, like bill payments or even fraud alert messages. Urgency is often used by scammers to manipulate their victims into acting quickly, to reduce the likelihood of them identifying that they're being scammed. For example, taking advantage of a sale or limited investment opportunity, or leveraging legitimate protocols that are time critical, like paying a bill or invoice. And I'm sure we've all received scam messages where we're asked to act really quickly to avoid debt collection or to avoid some negative consequence by not paying a bill. Emotion is also leveraged by scammers in several ways. Fear. They will help make you feel like you're in fear, that you're at risk of losing your money, or a family member is vulnerable. This is used often in bank and family impersonation scams. They'll also play on hope that you can secure your financial future or get something you want or need for a reduced cost. This is used in investment scams, online shopping scams, and also money recovery scams, scammers pretending to help you get your money back when you've lost it. And connection, leveraging our need to feel cared for or respected or to help other human beings. This is often used in romance scams and relationship scams. Whilst it isn't going to be possible to cover all of the techniques used by scammers in this session today, I wanted to mention a couple that are the most well used to help you stay alert and understand how they work. In remote access scams, scammers will reach out to you via phone, email, pop-up messages on a computer. They'll claim to be from a reputable company or an agency. Often that'll be your telephone provider or an internet service provider. They'll create a sense of urgency, stating that your device or your internet connection has a problem that requires immediate attention. And I've had many of these myself, where a pop-up comes up and my heart skips a beat and I think, oh, what's going on? Something's happening with my computer. But these scammers, they'll ask you to download software or share access codes to allow them to remotely access your computer or device. Of course, they're pretending to help you. They're pretending they're going to help you solve a problem. They might even be pretending they're going to protect you from fraud. Once they have access, they can view your screen, access your online banking, steal your personal information, or install malware. And often when that malware is installed, you won't even know or be able to tell what's going on in the background or what is happening, what information they're stealing, and what they have access to. But remember, stop, check, protect. Never ever download or install software from unsolicited contacts, and always verify the legitimacy of the contact using details from an official website before providing any information. If, though, you do download software or you have shared some information, and it can happen to all of us, contact your bank immediately. They can help you to secure your account, and they can also help you to get your device checked by a trusted repairer in your local area. And this happened recently to my own father, who had to have his device checked and cleaned after having had malware installed on it by a scammer. I also wanted to mention spoofing, as it's a very common technique used by scammers that is also really hard to detect. Spoofing occurs where scammers can use technology to make it look like the email address or the phone number, the caller ID, or the name in the text message, the sender ID, that they are using is the same as a real organisation. This means that the contact will look genuine on the surface, and it must be treated with caution. Spoofing is common in phishing scams, which are attempts by scammers to steal your most valuable information, such as your date of birth, passwords, or credit card number. This information is used by scammers in identity theft to access your accounts and steal your money. Or it can be used to redirect payments. It can also be used to perpetrate other crimes like money laundering or fraud. Common examples are text messages or emails containing a link that takes you to a fake login page for your service provider, like a bank, a telco, or a government agency. And as part of their deception, scammers also will be using the logos, the Australian business numbers, and the contact details of the real organisations. They may even copy text from genuine communication to make it more convincing. And again, some of the tools like artificial intelligence is making it really, really hard for us to detect these. Even in my teams, when we receive scam reports and copies and of phishing scams, and we look at the websites that have been set up, we will have a hard time understanding whether that's real or fake. So we know how difficult this is, and that's why it's so important for us to take steps to protect ourselves. Scammers, as we said, will create a sense of urgency and incite fear. They want you to act quickly without thinking. They'll falsely claim that a payment is overdue, and they'll threaten to suspend your account. On the screen now is an example of a real scam text message. Because of spoofing, it's not uncommon for these scam messages to appear in the same message thread as genuine communication from your bank. And so just to really explain it, you will have messages that you might receive from MyGov. And when scammers use spoofing, they're able to also use that same sender ID. And so you won't be able to tell whether this is really from MyGov or whether this is actually from a scammer. In this case, the scammers have pretended to be from ING, a bank, and have sent a security code to authorise a payment that's just been attempted. In reality, that payment wasn't attempted, it doesn't exist, and the security code is fake. The real purpose of a message like these is to make you think that someone is using your account in that exact moment, and so you're going to panic, and you're going to quickly call the phone number that might be in that message to stop it from happening. I would be panicked if I got this message. I would think someone is trying to fraud my accounts. The phone number listed does not belong to the bank. It belongs to the scammer. So when you call it to stop the payment, you'll be speaking to the scammer and not your bank. Because you think you're speaking to your bank and you're so worried about losing money, you're much more likely to do exactly what the scammer asks you to do. In fact, we all are. This is just a fundamental thing that happens to us as human beings. These scams are so effective because they mimic genuine attempts by your bank to keep you safe. So you're not going to necessarily know if a message is real or not just by looking at it. And it's so important that we all stop and check. I'm going to play a short video produced by Services Australia, which highlights a really common example of phishing that involves a MyGov impersonation email, resulting in identity theft.
There are a lot of phishing scams around. Phishing is when a scammer pretends to be someone they're not, like a trusted person or company. But why are they called phishing scams? Just like using bait to catch a fish, scammers lure you in so they can catch your personal information. Phishing scams that pretend to be us might say you're eligible for a refund, or there's a problem with your account, with a link to a fake website. One trick they like to use is to make a fake MyGov sign-in website. Scammers make these fake MyGov websites look real by copying our name, logo, and colours, so it can be hard to spot the difference. If you click on the link and provide your information, like your MyGov sign-in details, the scammer can use your details to sign into your real MyGov account and access your linked services. Then they can claim government payments in your name or steal payments you were meant to get. This is called identity theft. For more information, go to servicesaustralia.gov.au/scams.
So, it's not all hopeless though. There are things we can do, and there are ways that you can stay safe, particularly when phishing is so hard to detect. Firstly, before providing any information, call the organisation back, but make sure you do this by using a phone number on their official website. It takes a little time just to quickly look that up, but it's the safest way to protect yourself. Never assume that contact is genuine just because it looks or sounds real. Never click on a link in an unsolicited email or phone message, and never use the contact details from a message without verifying first. This slide highlights that scammers also take advantage of what's topically, timely, and relevant. Research shows that we're all more vulnerable to scams when we are busy, when we're tired, when we're sick. So it's essential to always stop, check, and protect, even when the communication you receive is expected, and especially if you're not feeling at your best. I'll share quickly that I was unwell last week and I was expecting a package. And feeling a bit unwell, I was looking at my messages and wondering why this package hadn't come. And I received a message from Australia Post. And in a moment of weakness, I was just about to click the link because I knew I was expecting a package. It was an important package that had been delayed for some time. And I think because I was feeling unwell, I got really close to just clicking that. I wasn't myself. But just before, I thought, I'm not going to take that risk. I'm going to go through and check in the official channels. And I did. But it reminded me that in those moments of weakness, sometimes that's when it's even more important to take those steps. And we'll see here on the slide too, there's a few examples just of those sorts of ways that they take advantage of those timely, those events that we're all subject to throughout the year, where scammers can sometimes be engaging in heightened activity. So tax time is a really common time, and you'll have all received ATO scam messages, I'm sure. Employment scams are rife at the moment. Charity scams, ticketing scams. We had some significant scam activity when Taylor Swift came out to Australia. So they really do target local events as well, and they're getting smarter and smarter at being able to do that. Investment scams continue to result in the most significant financial harm to Australians, with combined losses in 2024 of $945 million. This is nearly the same amount as all other scam types combined. And what's really sad about investment scams is that very often these are your average mum and dad who have worked hard their entire lives, have saved up, and are using their retirement funds towards the end of their lives to really, enjoy themselves and reward themselves for their, hard-earned activity during their entire life. This money is something that scammers are targeting in older Australians. They lost the most to investment scams in 2024 and are particularly vulnerable because they have access to potentially significant superannuation funds in Australia. So it's really crucial that you are aware of the risks and you know how to stay safe. So how can we use Stop, Check, Protect to stay safe from investment scams? Stop, don't act on investment advice from someone you've never met. Never feel pressured to invest, even if it's from someone you care about. If you have any doubts, cut off contact. Often people might contact you on Facebook or social media, try and give you some investment advice. But sometimes it can even be people that you know who might have thought that they've come across a good investment and tell you that it might be and put you in touch with a website or a social media account. If you've already made some payments, don't make any more, especially as a means of trying to recover or withdraw your previous investments. Scammers might keep telling you, just give me another $10,000 and then I'll release all of your money. Check. Consider getting advice from a licensed Australian financial services provider and protect yourself. Money Smart's Check Before You Invest website is full of advice on how to stay safe from investment scams. You might want to invest your money, and that's a really sensible thing to do, but we strongly recommend that you review Money Smart website before parting with any of your money, even if you are a seasoned investor. Being scammed can be a devastating experience, and as I've said, it can happen to anyone. If you've been targeted, act quickly to stop the scam and make sure you get the support you need. Step 1, prevent further losses. If you're not sure if you're being scammed, stop sending money. Scammers will keep pressuring you. They'll come up with heaps of excuses to get you to keep sending money and they'll even suggest that you borrow money or take out a loan. And we've had plenty of examples of people who've not only spent all of their own money, but it's impacted their relationships with friends and family because they've borrowed thousands and thousands of dollars from friends and family in order to pay the scammer. Contact your bank or service provider immediately to secure your accounts. And that's a really important step. You don't know exactly how much information the scammer has and how they're using it. Report the scam to Scamwatch. When you report your scam, the people who read your report, they understand how you are feeling. They understand that this can happen to anyone and that you're not alone. Reporting to Scamwatch also gives you the option to be automatically referred to support services such as ID Care, which is Australia's and New Zealand's national identity and cyber support service. They can help you make a really targeted and structured plan for free to limit the damage. And reach out for support. Scammers want you to hide or deny your experience. They try to isolate you from friends or family. They tell you not to talk to your friends and family. They might tell you that your friends and family will be jealous because you're going to make a heap of money. Or they might scare you and say that your friends and family might be in danger if you tell them. Reaching out to support services helps you to stay safe, understand what happened, and get back on track. If you need someone to talk to, we encourage you to speak with trusted family and friends. There is no shame. As I said, my father is an IT expert, but he's getting older. He wasn't ashamed to tell me that his computer might have been compromised. He was a little bit stubborn about going to get it fixed and checked out because he thought he could do that. But scams happen to anyone, and there is no shame in talking about it. We want to make sure that people get the support they need and that they can stay safe from similar scams in the future. Unfortunately, being scammed can have significant emotional and psychological impacts. So you can also reach out and talk to your GP, or for anonymous support, you can contact Lifeline or Beyondblue, who can provide free counselling services. And we've had many examples of people who have been in really terrible circumstances emotionally with their mental health because of a scam, and especially when they have lost their own money, but they've also lost money of family and friends, and that can really impact your relationships. If a scam has caused you financial difficulties, you can also get help from a financial counsellor. MoneySmart provides a list of free and confidential services to help you get your finances back on track. The National Debt Hotline also offers free, independent and confidential support from professional financial counsellors. And I have met and talked to people who have lost everything, but they have been able to recover. Yes, it takes time, but with the right support, you can get back on track. And be alert to other scams. If scammers have stolen money from you, they often come back for more. Unfortunately, 1 in 3 victims of scams have been scammed more than once. If you've lost money to a scam, keep a lookout for new ones, especially someone offering to help you get your money back in exchange for a fee. Only the police or your bank can assist with financial recovery, and they'll never charge you for doing so. The Scamwatch website has lots of really good information on what to do if you've been scammed, so if you've got some time, take a look at that. Scamwatch has been around for many years as part of the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, and many of you will be familiar with it. The Scamwatch website is a go-to source for reporting scams, even if you haven't suffered a loss. If you see scams, we want to know about them. This helps us stay on top of them, and we use the information that you give us to disrupt those scams. You might report a scam website. We can work to get that website taken down if you share it with us. The latest scam alerts, including education and advice about how to spot and avoid scams. We have resources too, available in 21 languages, in addition to English, as well as a range of resources specifically for First Nations communities too. And we have guidance on helping someone you know recognise they're in a scam. Sometimes you will have to have some conversations with people around you who you think might be in a scam, and maybe they're finding it hard to recognise that. These conversations need to be held sensitively and gently, but we have some guidance about how you can do that. Even with our best collective efforts, scams remain a real threat. You can play your part in making Australia a harder target for scams. When you learn about scams and how to stay safe via the Scamwatch website or some of our social media accounts, when you talk about scams with your friends and your family, the more stories we hear and the more we talk about them, the better equipped we are to protect ourselves. And when you report scams to Scamwatch, as I said, by sharing your scam story with us, you can prevent someone else from having their money or information stolen by a scammer. To end the session today, I'm sharing a video from Rod Quantock, who some of you may be familiar with. In this recording, he shares his own real experience of a bank impersonation scam. As you listen to his story, See if you can identify how the scammers used impersonation, urgency, and emotion to deceive him, and think about what you could do to stop, check, and protect.
I'm Rod Quantock, and for 50 years I've been a comedian. Well, before I was scammed, I was very familiar with the concept of scamming. I sort of prided myself on the fact that if anybody tried to scam me, I'd be onto them like a shot. But I got a phone call from somebody saying, we're from the bank. Very nice man with a very nice voice. He began by saying, look, your account's been compromised, and what we're going to do is we're going to shift money out of your account so the scammers can't get to it. He gave me an account number to move out some money. The call finished and he said, thank you, the money's been successfully moved. Before he hung up, he said, what time zone are you in? And that's when the penny dropped, and I realised that I'd lost quite a lot of money. The money that was taken, it was part of the money that we'd set aside to build an independent living unit for a child that we have with a disability. I rang the bank in Sydney that had taken the money and said, well, can you stop it? And they said, well, no, we can't violate the privacy of our customers. So I was lucky in that I'd led a life that had introduced me to people who could help me, and my wife, she got onto a friend of ours who's a journalist. The bank rang us and the money was back in my account. As a result of the scam, I sort of doubled down a bit on being vigilant. So I double and triple check everything that comes across my threshold that has anything to do with my money. I can't stress too strongly that you need to know that other people have been through this, and you, if you've been through it, need to tell other people it happened to you. In sharing your story, you've made a contribution to stopping scams in the future.
So thank you all for your time today. I'm going to hand over to the lovely Dr. Kate Gould, who's going to talk to you a bit further about scams. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for coming. You are all taking that important step to learn more about scams to stay safe. But it's important to know that while that is very important to learn about scams, it's not actually enough. The more we know about scams, the more confident we often feel that we can spot a scam. But actually, some of our research shows that overconfidence can be a risk too. And education is a part of this piece, but what we can't do is we can't educate ourselves out of our human emotions. And that's what scammers take advantage of. So no matter how much you know about scams, they like Jayde, like her father, like me and my father as well, who's got an IT background, we've all experienced scams and been close to or actually gone through with it because of that emotional manipulation. And that's why for me as a psychologist, this is so important to better understand how we can arm ourselves against this onslaught of criminals attacking us on a daily basis. So I'm going to talk about some of the scammer techniques that Jayde also spoke about with a slightly different approach. What are some of the things that make us vulnerable and how can scams impact us? I've also got some videos to share and a couple of top tips. And you'll see that most of this is largely consistent with what Jayde has said, and that's hopefully quite reassuring to see that we're all coming at this big challenge for us as Australians from the same perspective. So as Jayde mentioned, we've lost a lot of money in Australia to scams, and worldwide, actually a quarter of people have been scammed, and that's costing us in the trillions of dollars. But there's a financial perspective that's obviously really concerning, but also importantly, almost 60% of scam victims talk about a very serious emotional toll as well. And that's for a number of reasons I'll explain. One of the big ones is about the psychological techniques that scammers use. I'm going to talk about two broad categories. One, like Jayde mentioned about impersonation, they use what we call social engineering. And that's the techniques that they use to try to get you to trust them. And that can be about a person or a business, from all these sorts of techniques like spoofing a web page or a phone number, name, documents, emails, and even accents that might make you trust them a bit more because it's an accent that might, like Rod Quantock said, a really nice voice, or a phone number, or saying they're from the bank. They use everything and anything at their disposal, and they'll give you lots of different kinds of evidence to try to make them seem real. And it does become almost impossible to spot. The other big aspect is the emotional manipulation. So they do take advantage of everyday human emotions that are really important for us to just get through life in terms of trust, but also in terms of trying to bring up some sort of fear or urgency, like you might get in trouble, or someone you love might get in trouble, or you might miss out on something really important. They also take advantage of our curiosity and excitement. Some people might be just retired or not working or at home from illness or a bit lonely and bored. And so someone calling out of the blue or offering some exciting opportunity can be like, oh, this is interesting, let's see where it goes. And that's them manipulating you as well. And finally, another big category is around these very genuine, normal, loving, caring emotions we have to give money to charity or to have enough money to buy our adult child a unit, like Rod Quantock said, or to make sure someone we love is safe. All that care and generosity, again, is something scammers take advantage of. I want to introduce you to, as a neuropsychologist, a little bit of Neuropsychology 101, which is about how our cognition is built in this kind of pyramid. And at the very bottom, we have our kind of basic just being awake, alert, motivated, emotions and drive. And you need to be, I guess, awake and alert for all your higher level cognitive functions to work. So the next level up is just paying attention, being able to process information like you're all doing right now. You're paying attention to what I'm saying, keeping that in mind. Working memory, just sort of playing with the information that's like holding a phone number in your mind. Your language and visuospatial skills come next. You need all of that in order to be able to learn and remember important information. You also need your social cognition, so being able to understand social dynamics and what other people are thinking and feeling. And at the very top, at the pinnacle of this pyramid, is what we call executive functions. And there's these prefrontal cortex, very high-level thinking skills that help us with judgment, decision-making, reasoning, planning, organisation, impulse control, all these very important things that allow us to make complex decisions and navigate new or unusual circumstances. As we know as well, as we get older, some of these cognitive skills start to deteriorate a little bit as well. And what scammers do is that they take advantage at the bottom of that pyramid. They are attacking us at our emotional level, and they are hijacking our emotions. They get us to get into like fight or flight. They hijack our emotional cortex, like our limbic system and our amygdala. And so what that means is it's really hard to process information, to think clearly, to remember what they said, to find those red flags and inconsistencies and make good decisions, because they have taken advantage of us from that very bottom level. So I want to focus on romance scams because, like all these scams, they do take advantage of our emotions, but we see, in the people I support, really concerning romance scams, which is where they try to build trust in you through a romantic relationship or a friendship as well. And this can happen even if you're not looking for a romance. Or even if you're not on a dating site, you might be on a shopping site or a club or a society, and they are scouring different profiles to look for vulnerabilities and to just start a conversation and offer some connection. And then they try to manipulate you. And this might not happen in the first conversation when your guard is up, but after they've won your trust, they can spend years building trust in a relationship. And then they ask for some money to help out with a flight or a business issue, or they might introduce a cool investment that they've made some money on and try to get you on board. So here's some quotes from some research interviews we've done. Someone saying, the content of the discussions were romantic. He would express a lot of love for her, a lot of cutesy names, emojis and stickers, and there was even a video of a female person playing songs to him on guitar. And then it started to be scattered through quite often. What about the money, babe? What about the money? So putting on that pressure. And the way they can do this is through that grooming. They build up that trust so that they can later scam or defraud you. So some of the techniques they use are like sharing common interests. I love King Charles Cavalier Spaniels as well, or a previous trauma. Oh my gosh, you were in an accident? I was in an accident. My brother was in an accident. Early and frequent exclamations of love and flattery. I think you're beautiful just the way you are. My dog would love you. My cat would love you. So they really try to, and these are actual scripts that they write and sell to other scammers, say all these compliments. And when you hear it, it feels kind of nice when someone says that compliment. So they're manipulating you. They might send you a small gift, a little bracelet. The other thing they do is they're in contact with you 24/7, messages all through the night. Wow, they're so available. It's probably people on shift. It's not one scammer, it's teams. And because they're around the clock, you can't sleep. You're waiting for that next message. It's so exciting. You're into this whirlwind and you're not thinking clearly when you're tired. And they're accepting of your difficulties or disability. I don't care that you've got dementia. I don't care you have a limp. I don't care. I think you're amazing. And that can be, for people who have a disability, actually the scammer's the only person in their life saying these sorts of things. Everyone else is saying, you know, Mum, you can't do this anymore. Dad, you can't mow the lawn. It's not safe. And that can be really hard, and so a scammer's really validating them and actually meeting that emotional need, which for me, working in disability, it's quite confronting to think about. How do we address that when there isn't anyone else meeting those needs who's genuine? And so for that reason, some people maybe have a little inkling it's a scam, and maybe they're okay with that because they're getting something back out of it. So this grooming is very, very effective, and they become completely head over heels. They're in love with someone. Their life's going to change 100% for the better. They're about to come into money. This person's the do-all and be-all. And it just becomes, this person is perfect. They're perfect for me. And that's because they've been sculpted beautifully into a groom-perfect person for them. As Jayde mentioned as well, with artificial intelligence, it's now so easy for scammers who are big businesses. They have trillions of dollars and thousands of staff doing these scams. But also everyday people who want to make a scam can do that now. You can make a fake photo, a fake audio and fake video, and I'm going to show you an example of that. You can ask ChatGPT to make a grooming script for you to scam someone. You can make fake websites, as you saw, documents and invoices and text messages. You can ask AI to scrape Facebook and find some good victims for you. You can now get rid of all the typos and grammar errors that we used to find as red flags. They're all gone now. They're just using technology for such bad purposes. So this is just from a random person I found on YouTube who's made this amazing video of what you can do with AI. Now, you need to believe me that none of this is real. There are no people who, you're going to see people that look like people. They are not people. It's all AI programming. Every word, every background, every person is fake. And I want you to hold that in mind. If you saw a video like this or heard a voice, how would you be able to tell this is AI?
Hello, I'm not a real person, and that's the point. Tonight's episode is a little different and a little more important.
Artificial intelligence, or AI, can make fake things seem very real, just like everything in this video.
Online scams are easier now because AI videos make things look so real. Like this whole place.
As AI video technology gets better, scammers will use it to trick people. Here are some things to watch out for.
Ma'am, I see multiple threats on your computer. I need access immediately to secure your files. Nope, I'm fake.
We've detected suspicious activity on your account.
Can you tell me your login information? Just kidding. I'm fake.
These Miracle hearing aids are only $14.99 today. Click the link below and order now. Nope. I'm fake, just like these hearing aids.
We just need to confirm your Medicare number to update your benefits for this year. No. Not really.
Congratulations! You've won $1 million. You just have to pay the small claiming fee today. Nope. I'm fake.
We're raising funds for a sick parishioner. Can you send me some Apple gift cards? Nope. I'm fake.
Can you believe these concert tickets are so cheap?
No. They are fake, just like all of this.
Most of these scams only work if you respond quickly and without thinking. Don't fall for it. Take a moment to assess the situation.
Videos will be made and shared in the hopes of getting people to do things or feel a certain way. Be careful.
We're collecting donations for wildfire victims. Can we count on you? Nope. Nope, I'm fake.
It looks like I stole these donuts, huh? Nope. This is all fake.
They can make me say anything. For example, I don't know my rear end from a hole in the ground. See what I mean?
Did you know the candidate kicks puppies?
Nope. That's fake, and so are we.
If you think it looks fake, it probably is. Trust your gut.
If you mix bananas, pickles, and ice cream, you'll get sick. Be careful of online nutrition advice.
This tech is only getting better. We can even imitate people you know and love. Be careful.
Grandma, it's me, Billy. I'm in jail and I need to get bailed out. Please send cash now.
Nope, I'm fake.
I miss you, baby. If I could just get that plane ticket, we'd finally be together. Nope, I'm fake.
Hello, handsome. Just send me the money for the trip and I'll come see you. Nope, sorry, I'm fake.
What can you do?
If you're not sure if something is real, ask someone you trust.
Again, everything in this video is fake. Our voices, what we're wearing, where we are, all of it fake.
If you think you've been the victim of a scam like any of these, don't be embarrassed. Contact your local law enforcement right away.
Share this video with your loved ones who are online, especially if they may not be aware of AI scams, before it's too late.
Don't worry, folks. We'll be back to our silly videos again real soon. This was just too important. Take care of yourselves.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it? Was anyone finding it really hard to see how they were fake? Some of them you almost forget and think it's a real person now speaking. None of that was any real person. It's all AI. So that just gives you a taste, and that's where it is now. It's moving so fast. In 6 months, in a year, it's going to be even more difficult. You know, the guy pulling the donuts out of thin air, the cash check with the amount of money, or the writing was scribbled. All those little mistakes will be fixed in a very short amount of time. So as you say, anyone can be a victim of cyber fraud or scam if you're targeted in the right way, at the right time, and it's a highly skilled offender, because there's a scam designed for almost everyone. There's even scams designed for academics, fake conferences, fake journals. So they just target everyone in the right way. Unfortunately, most of the people in this room, not to make any judgments, are probably over the age of 65, and that is unfortunately, as you heard, that is the group losing the most amount of money to scams. You can see on this graph I've highlighted here. So that's almost a third of the losses, despite being only 17% of the population. So it's over 60,000 reports just in 1 year. And that's mostly investment scams and romance scams. There are other vulnerable populations too, and many of us are in multiple cohorts. We have that intersection. So Indigenous Australians, culturally and linguistically diverse communities, and people with disabilities as well are vulnerable cohorts. People who haven't been in the country very long, they're from overseas, or people who've been in an institution. You can miss out on these important aspects of cyber safety. My area of work is in acquired brain injury, which is 1 in 45 Australians, and that includes traumatic brain injury from car accidents or assaults or from a fall, and also strokes as well. That affects people's thinking skills, emotions, behaviour, their neurological functioning, and so all of those can also make us more vulnerable to finding it harder to pick up on a scam. Having a brain injury or stroke or having a traumatic brain injury leading to these cognitive problems, that's going to affect our relationships, our ability to work and be independent, and our identity. And these are invisible disabilities, so it can be really hard to tell who has a brain injury if they haven't told you. But my belief and my research is showing that does make people with brain injury more vulnerable to be scammed. But also, once you have been scammed, it's not necessarily that you realise in the moment. It can be really hard to recognise you've been scammed, particularly when there's all this emotional manipulation and social engineering, and that's because of cognitive problems and our communication changes. It also might be more vulnerable when you spend a lot of your time online or on the phone, or you're bored, or you're a bit more isolated, or you're not as familiar with technology and what should it look like. We also see that older adults have increased vulnerability to scam, particularly when they have cognitive impairment of any level, lower psychological well-being, lower financial and health literacy. And people who are more vulnerable to being scammed are also more likely to have Alzheimer's dementia and Alzheimer's brain pathology and mild cognitive impairment. So sort of small changes before there's a diagnosis of dementia, particularly relating to a little bit of a reduction in your thinking speed or memory. So this is, again, from our research. I think even the definition of the scam might not have even really been understood, maybe. I feel like it's been around the internet for a few years, but maybe if you've missed a lot of that, the word scam is almost probably a little foreign. So some people are a bit confused about what's happened and they don't even know it's a scam that's taken place. I might just, in the interest of time, just skip over Colin's story, but I'll say that we have lots of videos on our YouTube page if you want to hear some more stories. So if you have been scammed, it can feel like the rug has been pulled out from under you. Your sense of trust in the world and safety can be really affected. You can feel like a fool for being scammed because there is this stigma out there. So you can feel shame, distress, anger, anxiety. You can blame yourself. You can get really depressed about being scammed and the loss of money. People can feel suicidal. There have been people who have died by suicide after being scammed. You can feel very anxious and stressed, and that might be because of the scam and the loss of money, but also the scammers can blackmail you. They can try to extort you. They can threaten you and people you love. And just how am I going to live my life now without this money that the scam has taken? It can also cause a lot of conflict in relationships. There can be arguments, blame, secrecy. The scammers can try to tell you, don't tell anyone in your family. They won't understand what we've got. And family members can also look to put restrictions on. Well, maybe you can't be trusted with a phone and the internet. Maybe you can't be trusted with your bank account or bank details, and we should take that off you. And that's to try to help, but it can cause a lot of problems as well. And what the research shows is that for many people, the emotional impact of the scam actually feels worse than the financial impact, and victims of scams can have a more significant emotional response than even people of physically violent crimes. This is a really sad case of a woman who we'd been working with brain injury, and unbeknownst to the therapist, she continued with an online relationship, obtained a passport on her own and flew to Africa on her own to meet her would-be partner. She was on her own in a hotel room for about a week without any money and then walking the streets with her suitcases. I just think she came so close to losing her life in many ways or being assaulted. And this is because scams aren't just an online problem. They can manipulate you into traveling because you think there's some sort of love or your business support you're providing, and they can get you to move drugs, or they can do all sorts of other awful things. So there's very serious consequences of scams beyond finances and emotions. So we might be feeling a bit dark now after hearing about all the problems. So what can we do? What are the options available to us? This has been part of my body of work for the last 10 years or so, since I've seen how much it's affected people in the brain injury community. And so we've done research and developed solutions together with people who have been scammed around the prevention, about working with frontline services, measurement and treatment. So I'll just take you very briefly through what these options look like. So from a prevention perspective, I think the Scamwatch campaign is really excellent. It's easy to remember in mind: stop, check and protect. So from my perspective, stop means stop and think. Before you answer a call, before you give information, before you click on a button, think, could this be a scam? When we cross the road, we have to look both ways. We don't get worried about crossing a road, we just know we have to take some precautions to be safe. So that's what I'd encourage you to do too. Stop and look both ways. Check. Because they use all this emotional manipulation, check in with your emotions. Is your heart racing? Have they got you fired up? Are you got excited and your heart's racing? Are you scared and your heart's racing? Is someone trying to make you trust them? Have you spotted any of these techniques? So don't trust with this. Don't try to check the trust with the scammer. Don't say, how do I know you're real? Check with someone else that you trust. And that could be asking your family member, your friend, your family, the bank. I do that too. I ask my boss, I've been sent to, go to this conference. Is this a real conference? Or, is this a real bill? I wasn't expecting this. Or even when you are expecting a real bill, the scammers can change the bank account information in the real bill from your real invoice provider. So if the bank account details have changed to what you normally said, call them up in a separate way. And then protect. It is okay to just say no and hang up. If it is a real bank or a real provider, they will understand. So you can feel awkward doing that, but just if you're dealing with a criminal, you don't need to be polite to a criminal. Just make yourself safe. Block and report. All those reports that people make to Scamwatch really help with research, like what I do as well, to understand, are we making a difference? What are the things to look out for? So this is one of the things that we created. We were funded by, in Victoria, the Transport Accident Commission, and with support of the E-Safety Commissioner. We created an online prevention program where people can learn about scams, and we did this together with people with brain injury who've been scammed, and carers and family. It's freely available to anyone. It's CYBERABILTY.org.au, and it takes you through 8 topics that you can do at your own pace. It takes about an hour to go through all of them, and they're really user-friendly. It talks about scams, red flags, romance scams, gaining access scams, how to increase your cyber ability, how to stop a scam, and also, importantly, finding the silver lining, because we did hear from people that despite this awful experience, they had some takeaways that were really positive. We also understand that everyone uses the internet and is online in their own way. It's now pretty difficult to separate online life from offline life. They're very meshed together. So we've got an individualised plan. You can download it for free, or we can post you out a hard copy. And you can work on your own or with a family member or someone you trust to kind of think about how are you going to develop your own cyber safety strategies for the way that you use the internet, banking, phone calls, text messages, whatever, online shopping. It's also one of these things, it's hard to know really where you stand. How vulnerable are you as an individual? We did some research to actually develop an online safety screening assessment. It's called the CYBERABILTY scale, and it's really short. It takes like 5 to 10 minutes. It just takes you through a couple of questions and a couple of scenarios to see if you can tell if it's a scam or not. And you get a profile, and it tells you what your strengths and weaknesses are and some suggestions to improve your cyber safety as well. So that's all on our website, and that was funded by the AU Domain Authority. So When you have a website at eds.com.au, there is an organisation that actually helps make sure .au is safe. And aftercare. This has been the important part of this journey for my work since one of my clients, Colin, who I'll show you the video at the end if we have time, he was scammed, and I was really struggling to figure out how to help him. None of the psychology tools that I had been taught were really relevant. I tried everything in my toolkit and nothing worked. And what did end up working after years of trying to help him to disentangle from this romance scam, because one thing that I've learned is that even though the scammer is faking the emotions and the love, the emotions you feel are real. So if you think about, I'm sure everyone in this room has been through a breakup or a heartbreak. When that relationship ends, the emotions don't just stop. It can take a really long time for your heart to mend and to get over those loving feelings. And it's the same in a romance scam as well. So we spent a lot of time, years, trying to help him disentangle from this romance scam with great difficulty. And eventually we were able to do that through his work in becoming an advocate. And so we've learned a lot about how to help people work through feelings of confusion and denial and also shame. And the thing that has really helped is by helping others and making a difference and using your experience and voice for good. So I'm sure, it was difficult for Rod Quantock to talk about that experience, but it can feel really validating to know if you can help someone else avoid being scammed. And so we've taken all of these learnings and developed a program I'll tell you about as well. In the first instance, though, if the important thing is to act quickly, and that if you have been scammed, know that it is a crime. So you need to contact the police, bank, Scamwatch. And there is no shame, even though it can feel stigmatising. If your house was robbed, you wouldn't feel a sense of shame. You'd be angry at the criminals because it's their fault. And just like with protecting your house against robbers, we can do many, many things to keep us safe. But if there is a very motivated robber, they will find a way, no matter what we try. Nowhere is 100% safe. And it's the same with us online. No matter what we do, we can keep trying to make it harder for scammers, but there are going to be scams that still get through no matter our best efforts. So there's nothing to be ashamed of. So if you've been scammed, please reach out to people that care for you and reach out to mental health supports. And it's important as well, as we're echoing the same message as Jayde said, that if we just start talking about scams more regularly, just like, have you heard there's a storm coming, or there's some big accident on the highway we need to look out for? Have you heard about this latest scam that's going around? Can we all just help each other stay informed? So that also, if a scam does happen, it's a lot easier to just talk about it and say, gosh, I think this might be happening to me. I'm a bit unsure. Can you help me? So if somebody comes to you in your life and has said that they think they might be scammed, try to approach them with empathy and try to help them navigate and problem solve the issue, because we are hearing so many stories of family and friends and services even ridiculing, blaming, you're an idiot, how could this happen, or laughing at them, you're so silly, and that can make people obviously more distressed and close off from getting help. So this is the program that we've developed at our CYBERABILTY clinic. It's called Smooth Sailing After Scams. And it's a group program because being around other people who have been through it can be really validating. And in the program, we talk about and learn about scams, how to protect your money, how to work through those difficult emotions, and how to connect and reconnect with important relationships or lifestyle factors that have been interrupted by the scam. Obviously, Scamwatch and ID Care are important resources as well, as we've mentioned, and the mental health lifelines. There's other disability-focused programs as well that try to improve social media safety, online dating, and young adults as well. I just want to acknowledge that the work that I'm presenting to you today is from an enormous number of very helpful, talented individuals from a variety of sectors, and our people with lived experience that we call our scam ambassadors as well, and some very generous funders. So if you would like to learn any more about the resources or the research, you're welcome to contact me or find us on our website and or look up our YouTube videos as well for some lived experiences. So yeah, thank you, and stay scam safe.
Thank you both so much for those fantastic presentations. I can say that I definitely learnt a lot from those. So Jayde, when you said there is a scam for everyone, I can completely agree with that. There was a Goha Yazdabadi scam out there. I was traveling to Canada with my 2 young kids and my husband, and they were all right, they didn't need visas, but I did need a visa and I had left it to the last minute, went online to get my electronic travel authority and went to a website that wasn't the official Canadian website, but looked very much like the official Canadian website. Handed over my passport details, credit card details, the lot. Felt very silly afterwards, and I didn't tell anyone about it, not even my husband. Now he knows. So can I ask you both, how important is it for people to have conversations about scams?
Look, I think it's really, really important, as both Kate and I talked about in our presentations. It really is something that's going to help us be more resilient in the end. The more that we share the stories about what we experience in regard to scams, the better. We've all received scam messages, we've all seen scams, and most of us know someone who has either lost money to a scam, given information to a scammer, or got very, very close to doing that. So there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, there's nothing to be ashamed about at all. And I think we can all do our part. I don't think there's a weekend that goes by where probably my friends are probably sick of it, but I'm always sitting around the dinner table sharing stories about what I learn. And I have some really, it doesn't matter what your background is, I have really highly educated people, and I have some people who aren't, and everybody sitting around the table will learn something from those conversations. So we can help teach each other, we can share tips, but we can also share our near misses or our experience of scams, and that's really going to help us reduce that shame and that stigma so that people like yourself don't hide it. There is absolutely nothing to be ashamed about. And scams compared to other crimes seems to have that, that stigma, but we really need to get rid of that. It is nothing at all to be ashamed about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just echo your comments, Jayde. And an example that comes to mind is that we interviewed somebody who described that they had been in a hi mum scam. So a hi mum scam is where you get a text message and it's someone saying, "Hi mum, it's me, your son or your daughter. I've lost my phone. I'm messaging from someone else. Could you send me $2,000 so I can buy a new phone? I need it urgently for work and I'll pay you back." And it seems believable. And of course, my child, of course I will help. They get that urgency. It seems trustworthy. It seems like it's coming from a family member, and there's an excuse why it's a different number. So instead of calling your actual child on their real number and saying, "Did you send me this message?" people, maybe not everyone, but enough people send that money to the scammer. And so this happened, and the father at the dinner table said, he said at the dinner table, "I've been done in this hi dad scam." And the mum said, "Oh my gosh, that actually just happened to me too." But if she had said something earlier, then the dad would have known about the scam and not been scammed as well. So you could be making the difference in a really immediate way to protect people around you. And that shame is again another way that scammers manipulate us into not talking about it, so that they have more ability to keep scamming us. So this is another weapon we have against them, is just talking about it without shame.
Fantastic. I will remember to hopefully not get scammed again, but, have more of those important conversations around that. Now, Kate, that AI video you showed. That was really something else. That was very awakening for me to watch that and think, wow, we've really, over the last, 2-3 years, have gotten to this point really, really quickly. And in that video, it said something really interesting. It said, if it looks fake, it probably is, but none of that looked fake. So we've kind of moved past, that point of look out for the funny grammar and things like that you pointed out. So what do we do when we're faced with this sort of reality? And as you said, it's only going to get worse. What is it you would recommend?
It's a really important question because we don't know where the next steps of AI are going to take us, but we know that whatever the technology there is, scammers will manipulate it against us. So when they combine those trust indicators with the emotional manipulation, it can be devastating. There's been cases where they've actually copied like your daughter's real voice and made a phone call saying that the daughter's been kidnapped and to send money. And so, the distress of that is enormous. In terms of what we can do, I think it's being alert to the fact that we actually really can't trust anything unless we see it in real life anymore. It was interesting, they showed, politicians' messages, your priest, all sorts of trustworthy people can be made to seem, genuine, and they can be scammers. So I think you just really can't trust anymore what's online. You really have to verify everything. And that's unfortunate. A lot of people we speak to don't want to live in the world without being able to trust openly, that being a trusting person seems like a really positive attribute, but it's really dangerous now to be so trusting. And so I think of it as a pendulum. On the one hand, you've got trusting everyone. On the other hand, trusting no one. And we've got to find that balance in the middle of, don't trust, verify. Have a healthy level of doubt and suspicion. Unless you know them in real life. Because even a real person, their information, their banking information, their messages can be compromised too.
Absolutely. And I think, Jayde, this is a good time to bring you in, and you're doing some amazing work. So can you tell us a bit more about the government initiatives that there are to address scams and where we can get more information to stay vigilant?
Yeah, look, I think it's really important. We've talked a lot today about things that that you can all do, that we can all do to protect ourselves. And I really want to emphasise that it's not all your responsibility either. It is a shared responsibility across government, law enforcement, the community, and a lot of the services and expertise. We're all in this together. And by bringing together everybody and trying to come up with initiatives, the government really is looking at ways that we can help make systems and processes more robust so that scammers can't reach you in the first place. So a really big part of what the National Anti-Scam Centre is doing involves a few key things. One is that we're doing what we call scams disruption. We know that there are so many scammers now that there aren't enough police in the world that could go and catch all these scammers and put them in jail. We'd love for that to happen, but it's just not possible. So what we focus on are at-scale disruption initiatives, and that's where we take all those bits of information that you might share with us about scams in your reporting, and information that we source as well, and we use that information to share it with stakeholders, with organisations that can block and stop the scammers using the platform, so say digital platforms, also setting up bank accounts with our banks, or exploiting the telecommunications system. So we are doing a lot of work to set up data sharing processes. We've got a technology build that we've been working on for 2 years. And what that does is links up a lot of parts of the ecosystem. That's what we call all the organisations that might have a role to play in scams. And by linking those up and sharing those important bits of information, we're not sharing your information, we're not sharing sensitive personal information, we're sharing the information about the scammers. So a scammer sets up an email address. A scammer might set up phone numbers and be using mobile phone numbers. A scammer will set up a website, as we talked about today. And if we can share that information with those businesses and get them to take action to quickly stop and block those, it means that Australia can become a much harder target for scammers. So we want to make it as hard as possible for them to do their job, basically. They're sitting there in often call centres, or increasingly some people are forced in scam compounds overseas where they're perpetrating these scams at scale. If we can make it much harder for them to use the systems and processes in Australia, then we can help protect all of you from them. So we really want to stop them contacting you, so we focus on the contact methods. We want to stop them using the financial system, so we focus on working with the banks. And we also increasingly are trying to work with the digital platforms, the Facebook and Google and all those brands that you will have heard of, and we're working with them to try and get them to take more action. One of the really important things, though, that we've also been working on, the government passed some new laws at the start of this year. In the past, there weren't really any laws that require businesses to do much to protect people from scams. And now we have a new framework. It's called the Scam Prevention Framework. This framework is going to require businesses in Australia to make sure that they're taking steps to detect scams. So they're using all the information they have to stop the scammers setting up those bank accounts. That they respond to scams, that they respond to your complaints about scams and issues that you're having, and also that they report and share the information about those scams with organisations like ours, so that we can make sure we've got access to all that really good intelligence to prevent the scams. So there's more work to be done on some rules under those laws, but it's likely that by next year, the telecommunications companies, the banks and the digital platforms will be designated by the government to have to comply with those laws. And that's going to give us an extra layer of protection that doesn't rely on you. The only thing we do ask, though, is that you keep reporting scams, because that's going to help us keep on top of them and understand where the gaps are, so we can keep on doing our job to make sure that those businesses and organisations are doing theirs too. And just one final point, we also work really closely with law enforcement. That's something you often don't hear about. There's a lot of sensitive investigations that go on, and often globally. There are police now, the AFP and our state police, who work with international law enforcement to take down scam compounds. We share information with the police, and we have some staff who sit with police as well, who are working closely with them too. So again, that information in those reports is really helpful for law enforcement to be able to focus its priorities and track down and stop some of this scam activity at its source.
That's really great to hear that there's important work being done in the background to help protect everyone against scams.
When you block a text, and then there's an option of report, and that's the same with phone calls. When I sometimes get these scam fraud or something, I report and block. Is something being done about that? Because they seem to be getting worse and worse. And where does that report or block go, number one? Number two is malware. We mentioned about malware. Are there any free options for malware or computer cleaning? And I don't like sending my computer to someone on the street who fixes computers and we don't know what they're putting in there. That's another thing.
I'll start with the second one, and I will be careful that I'm not a cyber security expert. There is a difference. However, my best advice to you, and again, I talked a bit about my dad's own experience here. He told me that he was told to take his computer to somebody to get it cleaned, and I straight away said, stop, don't do that. And I got involved and checked things out. Made sure that he went into his bank branch. So he went to the bank branch and he spoke with them. The banks do have trusted sources that they might be able to recommend to you, and I would absolutely recommend that you either speak with your bank or contact ID Care. ID Care are a really good trusted organisation that help with that cyber recovery and making sure that your cyber security is safe after you've experienced either a scam or a cyber security incident like malware. On the first one with the phones, We could do a whole session on phone number regulation and how the systems work. One of the things I will say is that it does sometimes depend. So it'll depend on whether you have an Apple device or an Android device, and it can depend on the telecommunication companies you use. But what I will say is that currently there is a telecommunications code in place around scams, and the telcos have to share information and trace and block calls. So when you report that, that information is used by the telcos to support that work. At Scamwatch, we also provide phone numbers every week to the telcos that are reported in scams, and they use all of that intelligence in order to block scam traffic. Now, I know we're all still getting a lot of scam calls and scam text messages. Our data is showing that some of that's going down, but it is still very common. One of the other things that's going to come into play next year is something called an SMS Sender ID Register. This is a register that will help protect what you call the alpha tag or the SMS Sender ID. So if you're with a bank, and you get a message from CommBank, for example, in your chain, you'll be able to be certain that that really is CommBank. This is a new register that will be coming. So there's a whole lot of initiatives in telecommunications that are being worked on to protect people and make sure that we can reduce just the amount of scam traffic coming through the telco system. And the other point I will say is that we're also talking to organisations like Apple and Google that run the Android system, as well as the telecommunication companies, so that when this new framework is fully in place, that information like what's reported there might be able to come through the Scam Centre as well directly. As you'd know, technology is pretty complicated, and so setting up systems so that they can connect and talk to each other can take a little bit of time, but we've been working on that for a number of years. So I'm really hopeful that over the next sort of 12 months to 2 years, we're going to see a real reduction in a lot of that contact coming through to all of you.
Hi there. Mine's not actually a question. It's a website that my two tech sons put me onto. It's called Have I Been Pawned? PWNED. You just go in there and put in your email address, and it just tells you whether your email's been compromised in a data breach, for those that are interested. It seems to be genuine.
Yes, and there's also ones that tell you if your password has been used previously. I can't think of the name of those right now, but is it, sorry, what was it? Norton? Yeah.
And I think the Have You Been Pawned one, that one does as well. I think it helps, it'll tell you what type of information in the data breach might have been exposed. Okay, so that is a genuine site, and I've certainly used that and seen my information being compromised.
No, that's great. Thanks again for sharing that one.
Hello, thank you very much. That was excellent information that you've given us today. Something I had never thought of before is using direct debit. Do I need to check the bank every single time I do it? I just let them take my money. I don't ever check that it's going to the right place. Should I do that?
If you have a direct debit arrangement that's been set up and in place for some time, then you can be fairly confident that will be accurate. I think the risk that would arise is if you got an email or a message saying, here's your new information for your direct debit, and asking you to kind of do something or change a couple of numbers. So it's when you've got systems and processes set up that are working, it is always worth just checking those every now and again, same way that we should change our passwords all the time. But really the risk will happen if there's a change, and it's when something out of the blue comes along. It could be most likely an email or a text message, or even a phone call saying, look, we need to change your direct debit arrangement. We've got a new bank account, and can you please adjust this or sign this or fill this out or go to this website. That would be where the risk is in that situation.
Thank you. Can I ask one more quick thing? You mentioned, or in the book I'm just reading too, it says fraud, cyber fraud or scams. Now they're the same thing.
So there are some subtle differences, and I'll say this. Scams, prior to this new framework that I just talked about, the new scams framework, that's the first time they've sort of put the word scam into a law. So there was no real legal definition of what a scam is. Essentially, most of the things we're talking about today that are scams would fit the definition of fraud under some of our Commonwealth laws and also under some of our state laws. So you might see things on television where police are prosecuting people for obtaining financial advantage by deception or for some other fraud offences. You'll also hear us, and I talked before about not being a cybersecurity expert. So cybersecurity is really in the high-tech space, and that's where we look at like ransomware and malware and bot attacks on systems and all those sorts of things. So cybersecurity is a different thing too. When we talk about cybercrime, that's a broad umbrella term for a whole lot of offences, again, that might that relate to the online environment. So there could be some scams that aren't necessarily cybercrime. We heard before sometimes that a romance scam might happen in person, for example, or there could be a scam that's not facilitated via the online environment, and that might be considered not a cybercrime. So it's a really, really complicated legal environment as to what sorts of offences might be occurring. But for the most part, I always say most of these things we're talking about fit the definition of fraud. They are crimes. They are people trying to steal money or personal information.
First of all, thank you very much for educating us. Last week, whether they're international students or students that have to take jobs because they have to pay rent and they have to take whatever there is available for them. So at Central Plaza, the Worldwide Fund for Nature had these students asking people for signatures. No names, no telephone numbers, just asking you to sign a blank piece of paper. And once you signed that piece of paper, then the other one says, get it to sign, get it to sign. And I said, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. Can I report this?
Look, I would encourage you to report anything that you think's suspicious in that regard. So again, sometimes you're not always going to know what the intent of the people doing some of this activity is. Sometimes it can be just a really unsophisticated form of work, or a researcher or someone who's doing something maybe that doesn't really follow protocols. But it could also be someone who's actually doing something malicious and wanting to get those signatures to use them. So it's always useful to report it. As I said, when you report it, we can then often look at something new and think we haven't seen this before and do a little bit more digging around to see if this is something we should be worried about. Sometimes we can't tell with just one report, and that's why we really encourage the reporting, because what we start to notice is when we get sort of, 3 or 4 or 10, or by the next week we've got 100 people reporting this same thing, now we're really concerned and now we really need to have a look into it. So it's really hard in that case-by-case situation for us to always know exactly what people are trying to do. But I'm always suspicious with that sort of thing. If I'm going through a supermarket or a shopping centre and someone wants me to sign up for things, these days I'm just really cautious. We should protect our personal information the same way Kate talked about sort of locking our doors to protect from the theft of our things. We should protect our own information and make sure our the online systems we use are safe and that we change our passwords. But also if we're out in the community, being careful about who we give our information to. And that's, I've had some awkward conversations where somebody's wanted a copy of my driver's license for, checking into a hotel or doing something, and I'm just, where are you going to store that copy? Why do you need a copy? Can I just show it? These can be really awkward conversations, but I'm finding more and more that businesses do respect that, and they know that we are asking people to do that these days. Businesses also know that the threat of artificial intelligence, like in that video, is very real now, and so they know that we're all going to be asking a few more questions before we act, and there's nothing wrong with that. I would encourage all of you to do it.
But just before we wrap up, I had one last question for you, Kate. It can be really emotionally challenging being the victim, if that's the right word, of a scam. Those romance scams, large sums of money. It can be so embarrassing and something that it feels very difficult to come back from, or even to admit to yourself. So what would be your tip in those situations on the emotional side of things? Like, what's the first step you need to take emotionally to protect yourself?
I think for many people, sometimes the hardest first step is actually acknowledging that a scam has taken place. Because of the distortions and the manipulations, people can be very confused and in a lot of denial, and there can be a very natural psychological defence to try to hold on to the reality that you want to be true, that the romance is real, you're about to come into money, you're helping your family buy a house, that all these exciting things are going to happen to you. And to let that go is very confronting, and it can lead to so much distress and angst. So just that point of acknowledgement is a very big step, and you need to be in a very safe environment, and an environment and a support structure around you where you have the time to get to that point of being ready. And then once you've worked through that acceptance, then, then the sort of stomach drops out and you feel all of that angst and depression and sadness. So again, you need people around you to support you through that, to recognise that this is a very normal, understandable response to something very abnormal that has happened. And then, we are seeing people work through and process their emotions to get to a point of acceptance and adjustment. But it can take time, and that's something that we're tracking in our program. It's a 10-session program, and we track what stage people are at in that. We call a journey of adjustment, and we are seeing people work through those stages. And we've only done a small pilot study to date, but we've seen that out of 8 people who've been through the program, every one of them got to that final point of the journey of feeling like they could cope with life, and that they were acknowledging that scams happen, it's not their fault, and they might happen again, but they have the skills to better manage going forward.
It's excellent, and thank you for the hard work that you're doing in this space, doing research on what is a really important topic. Jayde, thank you so much for coming here today and sharing the important work that the government's doing in keeping everybody safe when it comes to scams. So thank you both for your insights. Also, a big thank you to our audience. Thank you so much for coming along today and your attention and your participation. So it's been a really great opportunity, I think, for us to all hear about how we can protect ourselves. We'll be keeping you up to date when we have more information coming on and we have more tips and things like that. So once again, thank you all so much for being here and looking forward to seeing you next time.